It is now my great honor to present our prophet, President Lorenzo Snow. Thank you.
My brothers and sisters, I feel to sympathize with all of you because of the drought conditions. On the journey here from Modena, we couldn't help but see the dead and dying cattle, the dried up streams. May I say unto you, even though we are not suffering as badly from the drought up north, the yoke of oppression is resting heavily on the church because of our indebtedness. During the past year, it became necessary to issue bonds. But brothers and sisters, this is not the real answer. The church must find some other way to pay its bills. We must find a permanent solution to our financial problems. Now, I don't know exactly why the Lord has called me to St. George. But I know He has called me here for a special purpose, for a reason which I feel He will bless us if my brothers and sisters, I understand clearly now wherein we as a people are failing to walk up to the covenants we have made. I realize that we are neglecting one of the most sacred laws, the law of tithing. The time has now come for every Latter-day Saint who calls himself a saint to pay his tithing in full from this day forward. That is the word of the Lord to you.
Travis Mangoodle, church news. That's important, because otherwise I want to be retired. So I'm only doing videos that are important for you to hear. And Mormons don't believe, Mormons don't care, Mormons don't realize they missed the latter days, they missed the Exodus. They're now headed for doom. Utter destruction, as the Book of Mormon calls it. So, I don't know why I'm wasting my time with you. Seriously, you're not going to believe, you're going to stick to the church prophets who have testified to you that they do not believe in, nor do they have the powers of, they themselves said it, prophet, seer, and revelator, and translator. They don't claim translator. And Mormons don't care. They follow titles. And the scriptures tell you that these guys are false. But you don't believe the scriptures. You say you do, but you don't. You actually gotta act on the scriptures. You gotta bear testimony. I put Matthew chapter 7. You shall know them by their fruits. And I found out, church ain't got no fruits. They self-declare they don't have fruits. They're not going to produce any fruits. They're just going to claim the seed. Dear God. And so, yeah, I cannot work with Mormons who are denialists, who refuse to study their scriptures, who refuse to study church history. And one of the complaints that the prophets have had from the video I did last night is that Mormons don't believe the church's version of church history. And so there are lots of examples, one of which, among the more infamous, is Thomas B. Marsh and his excommunication. Both Hinckley and Monson said the milk scrapings thing with the wife. And that came from George Albert Smith. And George Albert Smith lied. Because the actual affidavit by Thomas B. Marsh for his leaving is in the Joseph Smith papers. I mean, dear God. The church will not retract. They will not claim they made a mistake. They will not make any corrections because their authority is on the line. And they themselves claim they have no authority because they have no fruits. They won't do it. They themselves say, we will not show you any fruit. We're not even going to try. And Mormons go, yay, we thank you, God, for a prophet. I can't work with people like that. You guys are drinking too much Kool-Aid. So Mormons do not see the danger therein. You missed the Exodus. You missed the latter days. Utter destruction. No Zion. It's not clicking for Mormons. So, the other scandal, it has to do with Trent Tooney doing the Church News article. It's a well-established fact. It's even got its own Wikipedia page. The windows of heaven, Lorenzo Snow. Never happened. But Trent Tooney, in early May 1899, 85-year-old church president Lorenzo Snow felt directed by the Lord to travel 300 miles from Salt Lake City to St. George in the southwestern corner of Utah without knowing why. Mormons have to fill in the gaps for what the prophets themselves say they aren't. has no authority. He has no power. He denies the power. And there Trent Tooney, without knowing why, he went. And Mormons can't make the connection. This is a level of stupidity that is caused by too much Kool-Aid drinking. Mormons are addicted to the Kool-Aid. They're flooding their minds with the poison. It's leading to their doom. And so he's actually quoting from the video. Which actually was put in Saints, Volume 3. Oh my God. I cannot work with revisionists of history who just deny the truth, deny their own church history. They make up their own church history to be faith promoting and to give powers to the prophets who declare they don't have the powers and they will never demonstrate the powers because they have no authority. I cannot work with such stupidity. And people wonder why I want to retire. I'm watching the news and I'm seeing Islam and what they've done and how they got there. Canada is like, what the hell? How did we get to this place in America and it's now in Canada? They're now invading the Canadian universities, protesting. Death to America, death to Canada, death to Israel, death to the Jews. Replacing the national flags with Palestine flags. This is a terrorist attack. And Biden wants to bring more terrorists into America. That's how it all got started. See, originally, America was founded on slavery. They came from West Africa, mostly. That's where my ancestor came from, which was raped by my ancestor, who was the plantation owner. They were Muslim, but they were not allowed to practice Islam as a slave. And so over the course of time, Christianity forced them to become Christian. And so they did away with their Islamist tendencies, religion. And so in the 1960s, there was an effort by Islamists to seek refuge into America. And so in 1965, an act for bringing in refugees into America was signed into law. And we brought in a lot of Islamic refugees into America. And they didn't give up their religion. That was the cause for them coming to America. Which should have been the first big clue. Okay, wait a minute. You're abused by the religion, but you're not giving up the religion. Just like Mormons. And so what was done was they are what's called sleeper cells. Russia was doing it during that time too. They were sending in Russians into America to pose as Americans, and then in the 80s, that's when they got discovered. And there was a whole TV series about it. Really cool. But nonetheless, Islam was doing the same thing too. And so they get to America, they have children, they increase in number, and those families, those Islamists, they become known in the community, and then they get into positions of authority and trust, and they start filling up those positions of power and authority over the people. And just like a game of chess, getting all the pieces moved into the right place, October 7th happened. And the whole Islamic world cheered. And so Gaza, the parents, chose not to leave, to save their families, to get out of the war zone, let Israel deal with Hamas. Nope. The parents stood and fought against Israel, shielding Hamas, fighting alongside of Hamas. They lied to us. They deceived us. And so, Israel, you don't mess with Israel. Everybody knows this. But Hamas did it. 2 billion Islamists, 16 million, 17 million Jews. It's their judgment day. Jesus didn't show either. And so, the parents died. Children are orphaned. Children starve. Children die. The whole world is now against Israel. The parents are to blame. Hamas is to blame. Nobody wants to blame Hamas. Nobody wants to blame the parents. It's a completely different war than Ukraine. Ukraine left by the many millions to seek safety. Those who stayed were the ones who stayed to fight. All Gaza stayed and fought. They didn't flee. They then started to flee after Israel came in and destroyed them. And it took a while. They were getting impatient. Israel was giving them more than enough time to leave. And then there was that Islamic jihadist group that bombed their own hospital to blame Israel. And that got exposed. But when you have denialists of a religion, right, Mormons? You tell your own story. You claim to be the victim. And so instead of taking the injured out of the war zone, they stayed in the war zone. Medical doctors went into the war zone. Aid tried to get into the war zone. They were shielding Hamas. This was their whole plot the whole time. And so they claim victim. And now, this year, after the failure of Islamic and Christian and Mormon Jesus to show for the second coming, everybody escalated. And Islam is the only one standing strong. The Mormons in Arizona backed down and retracted the new law against women. And the MAGA evangelicals also. Well, Florida, they just had theirs go into effect, but still. They failed to shut down the government. Everybody's attacking. Everybody's trying to destroy America. And so now the protesters are going specifically to the schools and universities, colleges. Except for the Utah group, they also went to the Salt Lake County Jail. But they've expanded now to the other university. Was it the Logan one? And so what they're doing is criminal, because they're calling for the extermination, the genocidal murder of Israel. They're shutting things down. This is education. These are private schools. They're history deniers, and they're shutting down education, threatening the schools to accept their revisionist history about Islam, about the Jews, about the land, about their intentions. Not talking about their judgment day, their jihad. That's all a super sacred secret, because it's not faith promoting to their final solution for America and the world. And so, yes, the police have to come in. And they get violent with the police. And the police arrest them. And then they claim to be victims. See the pattern? And they keep going. Just like Hamas. Following the same pattern. And because no Mormon or ex-fo nevermo does their research on church history of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, you don't see that that's the exact same pattern of the Danites in 1838. That overthrew Joseph Smith's church. I've done all the videos. I even have a little paper section in here about all the metamorphosis of mind of Joseph Smith, turning into a monster, violating the Book of Mormon, changing the name of his church. Everybody falls for it. And so now it's becoming a survival of the fittest as to who gets to rewrite history. So, do you want to know the real truth, or do you already know the real truth? Wikipedia, Windows of Heaven film. It's under production, and it's, if you don't know the movie, it's support for Section 119. Priestcraft that violates the Book of Mormon. That was one of the changes that Joseph supposedly changed, violating the Book of Mormon in 1838. Dear God. Trent Tooney, dear God. The prophecy that Snow gives in the film is based on articles written by his son, Leroy C. Snow, 35 to 40 years after the events of the film. contemporary historical records do not support that Snow made the prophecy depicted in the film. I could have told you that, because they tell you they don't prophesy, they don't reveal, they don't have visions. Do you ever wonder why? Joseph Smith did. All Mormons believe it, even though they turn them Christian. And the Mormons can't understand why Christians don't accept them. Because Christians don't accept prophecy, revelation, and visions. Did you not read Joseph's 1838 visionary account? The Methodist preacher. I cannot work with such stupidity. I cannot work with people who claim to be Mormon and don't even know what Mormonism is. But it gets worse. The depiction of rain in St. George is mostly historically accurate, with a reported rainfall of 1.89 inches during that time. However, the rainfall caused extensive damage, and contemporary church leaders did not connect it to the payment of tithing. And so here's the background of the movie. See, in the 1950s, this is after World War II, the church had an apostle, and they don't talk about him here, so I don't remember his name, but he was convincing the president to invest, in the sense of, if we build it, they will come. You know, the source for Field of Dreams. Is that, who was that? Kevin Costner? Yeah, Kevin Costner. Everything's taken from the Mormon Church. And so Robert Redford, yeah, he's gone. Screw the Mormons, we're out. Good job, Mormons. Going to LA. No more Sundance for Utah. I mean, year after year, he's having to give his little statement of how this is art, and people need to let their religious beliefs lay low and stay away. Let them perform. God. Nope, couldn't handle it anymore. They're gone. Mormons are too evil, enforcing their religious morality on others. You know, Lucifer's plan of happiness for his children. And so in the 50s, this build so that people will join failed. And so the church went into debt again. And so they changed to be more strict after that failure. And thus they became prudish, hoarding the money, skimping and such. And thus temples. We're not going to build a temple unless there's enough elders who are paying tithing to justify a temple. And so notice under Nelson, after hoarding all the money, now it's the end of the world, and he's trying to buy up land as much as he can before the end. So that when the end comes and the church still remains, hey, we own the land, you're going to have to be our slaves. That's the fifth one, Mormons. Don't you even go to the temple? The law of consecration. Everything you do goes to the church. You're a slave. I cannot work with such incompetence. All these years, sacrifice my life for the truth, to share it with you, to warn you of the danger of this church that is blatantly obvious. And you say, bleep you, Travis, we want you dead. The Kool-Aid is telling us to murder you. And so this was when the film was derived. They needed to reinstitute tithing among the Mormons because of this failure of invest. And so when filming began in 1962, and the general authorities approved the released version. Yeah. Did you not listen to Hinckley and Monson? Why did they tell you the lie at the pulpit of conference? Because they had an agenda to threaten Mormons to be loyal. Do not challenge their authority. And so here, the church got themselves financially in trouble. And so they went to the Mormons with this video, pay up. And so it was not too long after that it was about wages, no longer interest annually, because America was starting to transition from farming communities into big city office jobs and malls. And so that transition changed the family unit and made it tougher for husbands to support their families. And here the church is still saying, give us 10%. And so now that the economy is even worse, the church is still saying, pay your tithing first. So that's what's going on here. This is why Trent Tooney is doing this. It's not for a faith-promoting thing about the prophecy of Lorenzo Snow, that if you pay priestcraft, you'll be blessed. The church wants as much money as they can get before the end comes. That's why they're doing this. I've told you this. I told you in advance. Last year, before the end of the year, I said, watch. The church is going to try all kinds of ways to get money before the end. And sure enough, they did. They released the vending machines early, and they ended them late. And thus a record number of money for the church. And they still claimed, oh, thanks for the record number of money that is going to help people around the world. No, it's not. It's all fraud, remember? You're not catching on. It's all a financial scam. These guys are frauds. The name of the church is the Corporation of the President of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It's not a religion. They have articles of incorporation. Brigham Young's articles of incorporation was the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Heber J. Grant said, no, we're not keeping the name because the church or the United States won't let us. So it's now the Corporation of the President of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But they keep telling us as members, it's the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints ever since Joseph Smith in January 6, 1830. What? No. No, it wasn't. Everything is a revisionist history for this church. And here, Trent Tooney is helping with this. This is a danger threat. Again. And nobody cares. You just let it happen. The church is sitting on multi-trillions of dollars from every source of income. And still they are so greedy that they are squeezing every single penny into their vaults. Stealing everything they can. They're suing their own insurance companies to get their money back. This is how greedy they are. And I've warned them. You've got to use the money before you destroy America. Because once America is destroyed, the monetary system around the world, not just the United States, is going to fall. Money will be worthless, even if it's digital money. They have to get Zion built with the money before the fall. They've already failed. They failed during the Exodus year of 2020. And they failed for April 8th conference weekend. The Salt Lake Temple wasn't finished. The palace for Jesus wasn't finished. The throne for Jesus wasn't finished. Jesus didn't show and didn't get coronated. This is their whole plan. This is what they've been telling us. And they failed. And so because of their failure, the Arizona Mormon priesthood rose up to escalate things. And now they're having to retract. Because they went too far. Dear God, Mormons. You can't just sit back and say, well, it doesn't affect me. You know, there's nothing I can do about it. Do you not catch on what everybody's trying to get people to do? They're trying to get you to protest. They're bullies. All of them are bullies. Trying to threaten your lives, to force you to stand up and defend yourself so that the bullies can claim victim. And have cause to destroy you. God. I can't help you, Mormons. You will not see. Blinded by Kool-Aid. Porn doesn't cause blindness. Kool-Aid does.